A hot summer afternoon, the governing council meeting, which started at 2 o'clock, ended at 3:30. And after 3:30, I took off my governing council cap and put on my board of visitors cap. And I was walking around the hospital. For those of you who've seen Kidwai, will recognize that in the middle of the busy OPD, the outpatient department, there's a small quadrangle with a couple of stone benches on it where people can sit, where relatives can sit. And when I was going past, I found an elderly gentleman, obviously from a rural area, looked a out and out small town resident, was sitting all alone there. And he was sitting on this hot summer's day, he was sitting in the sun. And he was just sitting quietly. And I found that odd because anybody who was sitting in the sun on a hot summer's day might have got up and come into the shade if he was waiting for somebody. And I found it odd for him to be sitting in the sun. So I went up to him and began talking to him and said in Kannada, I asked him, "What are you doing sitting here? Are you waiting for somebody?" So he looked at me quite lost and he didn't even know how to answer that. And in rural Kannada, he told me, "Yes, I'm waiting for somebody, but I don't know what to do." He told me his story. Apparently, he had been an inpatient in the hospital for the previous 3 weeks. He was being treated there. He had the doctors, the nurses, the ward boys, everybody attending to him, as happens in any public hospital. And that morning, the doctor had addressed him and told him, "You can go home now." This was the bare facts of the case. And he also explained to me that his home was about 75 kilometers outside Bangalore, a small village in Kolar district, and his family had come to admit him here. And in between that time of admission and that day, in 3 weeks, they had come twice to visit him. They had gone back. This was 1993. No mobile telephones. To an uneducated, illiterate person like him, he wouldn't even know how to use a landline. He described his home in the village. It was obvious that if they wanted to use a telephone, they had to go to the local post office to use it. Therefore, in short, communication between him and his family was practically non-existent. Come back to that day. The doctor only told him, "You can go home now." So when I asked him, "Have you been cured and therefore being sent home?" He said, "I don't know." "Have you been told to come back again?" "I don't know." "Has he said anything about your disease, of how it has progressed or how it is cured?" He said, "I don't know." And to me, that was a shocking circumstance. It was the truth. It was not something that the old man had thought up, but it was the truth that had to be faced. And I realized that that old man was an abandoned old man. He was in a position where the very, very busy doctor who was doing his level best for the patient, the doctor had not the time to explain to him what stage the disease had progressed to, didn't have the time to tell him what to do next, and had told him to go home. There was no means of communication between the old man and his family, and he was absolutely forlorn. He was sitting there helplessly